apologize. The reason that I wasn't seeing anything happening live on Facebook is because I neglected to turn on the settings. So we are midstream here, so I'll just recap a little to say that that today's topic is reactivity. And so what I was talking about when we weren't streaming, what I was talking about as far as reactivity is that we have these triggers that are kind of programmed in, and when this program gets activated, we just like robotically go through the motions or the reactions around program. And so what is it that happens when we actually become reactive? So I'm gonna back up for a second to say, if I haven't responded to your comments, it's because I don't see them. I apologize for getting started late this morning. It was user error on my part. And so I figured it out sort of midway into the conversation. So the conversation is, good morning, Rosalind. Thank you. Welcome, welcome. It's good to have you here. Good to know that we are live. And that all is well in the Facebook world for now. We're talking about reactivity this morning. So I was talking before it was live streaming, I was talking about this really old, from when I was growing up. Good morning, Kimberly. Great to have you here with us. And Rosalind, of course, it's always great to have you here with us as well, and everybody else who's joining us. So I was talking about this skit, and I don't remember the source, but it was when this person heard Niagara Falls, all of a sudden they would go into this altered state, and every time they heard Niagara Falls, they would say, slowly I turned, step by step, inch by inch. And I don't even remember the rest of it, but that has stuck with me for forever. And that is the quintessential example of reactivity, you know, where a word or a phrase or a glance, it just triggers this whole reaction that we kind of don't control, where we kind of lose our mind, in that we are no longer inhabiting our mind. We're no longer present. We're just in this programmed loop of reactivity. So what does it look like in your life? Like, what are the things that you get reactive about? There are certain things, you know, that can really set us off. And I remember when I was growing up in my family, my mom used to say, you're not a free and independent agent. And I don't know, like even today, I got a little twinge in my body in response to that. But I used to get furious when I would hear that. Maybe because I wanted to be a free and independent agent, or maybe because that wasn't what I believed, but that was an excuse for denying me certain things that I wanted, you know, certain choices that I wanted to be able to make, and they were quashed. Or anyway, when we have these reactive patterns, I think it behooves us, and sometimes we can't do it in the midst of it because we're just working the program. We might be able to sidestep it by the moment we're feeling that reactivity is to take a deep breath and to go deeper to see what's going on, like what are the emotions, feeling those emotions in our body, bringing awareness rather than going into the whole reactivity, feeling the awareness and digging more deeply to be questioning in ourselves what is feeling threatened. So I had a really wonderful encounter with somebody, session with somebody yesterday around this reactivity thing, and I was going to have a different topic today, maybe tomorrow instead, but called the problem with problem solving. So this was a huge trigger for this person, who is quite the visionary, and the experience when people were talking about problem solving was one of constriction, like feeling like being put in a box. So what we're looking at today is the dynamics of reactivity. And so when people feel like they're being constrained or squeezed, then the initial response is to fight back, right? To try to expand your space, to fend off whatever that energy is that's constricting. And the opportunity when we experience this kind of reaction is to be present to what's happening, whether in that moment or to go back later and to resource it, and to identify what is the underlying story that is generally obscured, because the reaction's so quick that we're not really present to what the underlying dynamic is. So I think that when we experience reactivity, we can pretty reliably say that it's due to a perceived threat of some sort or another. So if we can recognize that our reactivity is a response to a threat, then we can look at and perhaps identify that threat or the perceived threat. It's maybe not even a threat anymore. It might have been in the past, it was somehow associated with a threat. But we can identify that threat and identify the emotions that are connected to it, feel the feelings in our body, and then when we allow ourselves to be present to the feeling, most often what happens is that it dissipates when we stop denying it. We've been talking about shadow this week, transmutation, transformation, bringing the shadow to light. This is more of the same, because our triggers are based in shadow play, right? Meaning that they're working on a level that is other than conscious, that's not in our forefront awareness. They just happen automatically, and like literally like a switch is flipped, and then bam, there we go into the program. And the thing about reactivity is that it is an impediment to our freedom. When we are reactive, we are not free to choose, right? We're in this cycle of programmed response that is outside of our, I want to say, control, because we're not even there anymore. It's like we left the scene, you know, and something else took over, and we're not at the helm anymore. We're not even in the house. So I and that's not freedom, right? Freedom is the opportunity to choose and make conscious determinations about our behavior, our responses, to be able to be response able. You know, when we're triggered, it goes out the window. So Kimberly says, I deal with this. I shut down, and I know that's not healthy. I can't handle stress very well at all. I used to drink or use drugs, not anymore. Congratulations for you, Kimberly. That's huge, to not be using substances to avoid situations. I deal with life on life's terms now. I go for a walk, listen to music, or watch a movie. That's awesome. Okay, so what you're developing, Kimberly, is a lot healthier responses to stress. So there are, you know, to avoidant behaviors. They're not necessarily just avoidant either. You know, sometimes behaviors that look like avoidance are also, or are instead, behaviors that enable us to regroup. So walking away from something, going for a walk, listening to music, those are wonderful, wonderful things. Watching a movie even, you know, to be able to detach a bit from whatever the thing is that we're responding to with stress. And that's, I think that's not, I mean, it could be an avoidance behavior, but I also think that it can be a self-care behavior. You know, to recognize I'm not resourceful in this moment. I need to replenish. I need to step away and regroup, and then come back to things. And another way to replenish and regroup is through breath, through doing something that is calming, listening to music, taking a walk, watching a movie, meditating. For me, experiencing beauty, connecting to beauty, connecting to nature. There are all kinds of things that we can do that enable us to refill the well, so to speak. And when we are depleted, we tend to be most reactive, right? Because we don't have the resources necessarily to presence ourselves to something that may be challenging. So nourishing ourselves and nurturing ourselves is really, really important to being able to function in our optimal capacity. So Rosalind says, I was very reactive over the ever-changing measures of the workplace. I don't talk to anyone at work about it to avoid tension. When I'm outside of work, I'm free to return to self. So Rosalind, I'm so sad to hear this. And the thing that I do really want to acknowledge in your statement here is that you use the past tense. You said, I was very reactive over the ever-changing measures at the workplace. And you're not talking to people about it to avoid tension, but it sounds like, based on what you said, that when you're outside of work, you're free to return to self. I think it might be that in the workplace, you need that presence of self more than any place, right? Like to be in tune with your core, to be present to your wholeness. in the workplace in order to better navigate it. And I think it's really interesting what you're saying here, because I think that that's a common way for us to deal with situations that are challenging or that we feel powerless in, is we abandon self. And it's ironic because that's the time that we most need that connection to our heart and soul, to our integrated core. And whether you choose to discuss stuff with folks at work or not, bringing your wholeness is something that I believe can support you very, very powerfully in that challenging context. And so what happens oftentimes is, as Kimberly said, we shut down and we abandon self in these circumstances when we most need that connection and that wholeness. And so I invite you to find a way to presence yourself to you in that space, to your wholeness, to your strength, to your presence, you know, just to be able to be present to you in that difficult environment. Kimberly says, replying to Rosalind, that's a rough one. That's really not fair. You should be able to connect with your coworkers. That must be uncomfortable. And I'm sure it is. And to avoid tension, there may be, when you're coming from your wholeness, there may be a way to communicate that might not create tension. Oftentimes it's the fear of tension or the fear of conflict that creates conflict. You know, that when we can be connected, when we can find a way from our wholeness to relate to others, that our communication might be better received and better delivered, with equanimity, you know, that we can communicate more effectively from connection than dissociation, even though the inclination is to recoil and to contract and to shut down. You know, that it's maybe a call, an even deeper call for us to be present. And so Kimberly added, you're a caring, understanding, kindest person, sending good vibes your way. So that's beautiful, Kimberly. And Rosalind, we all are, you know, sending support. And I think oftentimes from our woundedness, what happens is we learn patterns of retreat, and it feels like it might be safer to retreat and disappear. But that also has its consequences. It has its consequences not only for us, which is a big deal, but it also has consequences in the environment. You know, it has consequences in our being unavailable, which creates more distance, which potentially can create more tension inadvertently. You know, that can happen inadvertently. So, you know, I think if there's a way, and I know it's like super challenging in a hostile environment to maintain your equilibrium, that's like the biggest challenge there is. But to find ways to bring yourself back to yourself in that environment so that you have better options, more expansive options and a greater freedom of choice, rather than a freedom of expression, because you may look at the environment and say it's better not to communicate this than to communicate this, but to be coming from a place of empowered choice. That's really what we want to be doing in life, right? Is to be coming from a place of presence and empowerment. And I know workplace environments can be oppressing, feel oppressive for sure, with all the politics and dynamics. I'm not someone who's really good at navigating all kinds of social dynamics. I work alone, or I work one-to-one with people, and that's a context that works really well for me. It sounds like you're in a work environment that provides you with a bunch of challenges, and there may be ways to address those challenges that are also supportive of your being, whether it's in your own shift of self-care in that environment, or perhaps, maybe some communications that initiate a shift in that environment. So reactivity is kind of a dramatic expression of resistance. And when we look at the thing that we're resisting, we can gain some insights. So again, I'm going back to a topic from last week, is harmonize rather than compromise. And that's the model of nature. Nature finds a way to harmonize systems and interactions. And when we step back far enough, we can see the bigger picture, and then maybe get insights into the harmonies that could the potential harmonies, and even perhaps ways in which we may be able to initiate them or instigate those harmonies. So thank you. I'm presuming that's Dido. Thank you for putting in the link to other shows from the Core Connection. And if you guys are enjoying this, please share it. Let's grow the community. Let's make these conversations even more dynamic than they already are. Let's get more people engaged in really looking at the questions of life and how we can grow and evolve together collectively into a world that is thriving. So please share and like it and do all that great stuff. I'd really appreciate it. And you know what would be great too is if you can follow the YouTube channel for Enlightened World Network, because when we have enough YouTube followers, then there are revenue opportunities, and Enlightened World Network is pretty much a gift that we've been given, and it'd be nice to be able to support it. So Kimberly, you're so welcome, and I want to thank all of you too. You are what makes these conversations so rich and engaging. Thank you, Kimberly. Kimberly says, I will share. And I just so appreciate you and the time that we spend together and the rich insights and perspectives that you offer. And that's it for this morning. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook channel each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. So please check out the other awesome programming and on the other Enlightened World channels, EWN 113 Earth, Enlightened World Network, and Enlightened World Living. And until next time, you're so welcome, Dido. Thank you. And so much appreciation for you and Sue and all you guys do. That rhymed. Wasn't intended. Anyway, so much love to you guys.